Thank you for your time. My name is Beitullah. I appreciate you being here. Please keep in mind what we are doing here on Bet On It Shooting from the Hip. We explore human ideas, philosophies, and noteworthy information. This exploration is us thinking aloud, a thought exercise, jumping into ideas and examining them and re-examining them. You will find we are prone to using adult language and expressing opinions. In keeping with that, you shouldn't believe anything we say. We are not experts of any kind. We are just having fun with these ideas, philosophies, and information, in the hopes you will find it fun and interesting and entertaining. We encourage you to invest time in searching out these subjects and come to your own conclusions. Now on with the shit show. Slim, what's going on, babe?
Not much. Just sitting at a round table. How are you?
Same. Okay, so for today's show, instead of actually having a theme, which we will return to using that format, today we're going to just simply explore random thoughts, and recently I've been thinking about the changes that we've gone through in, say, the last 14 years. And how significant they've been. And so, the times, they are absolutely a-changing. So we here in North America went from being the bastion of free speech to the push then to curtail that speech. And they used all sorts of things to sort of manage the freedom of speech. They referred to it, or they called people out in terms of what they were saying, their content as hate speech, or and using all sorts of derogatory terms to sort of to knock down whatever it was that they were actually saying. So, and then what the end result is also produced now, which we kind of recognize kind of publicly now. I think people talk about it in a very open way. Out and out censorship, right? Like where they again curtail what's considered appropriate or inappropriate, and the real question becomes like, for those who are making those decisions, what qualifies them to make such decisions, right? So, and we've seen in that same time the rise of the woke crowd, who are essentially people who, with no life experience, trapped in their subjective view, thinking they know better than everybody else, right? And to me, it struck me as kind of curious and almost ironic that they, using the term woke, it comes from awakened, and just in my observations, they hardly seem awakened or enlightened at all. In fact, that they're exercising their own self-interest, and therefore an agenda. All right, so I find it kind of curious. Any thoughts?
I mean, it makes sense to have a political grouping that leans one way or another, but I think the whole idea of being woke, like, it essentially comes from their perception of themselves. Like, oh, I'm doing good things, I'm helping people, but really they're looking for a quick fix to be good. And they're like, oh, look, I waved the red flag. I spent $50 on this flag. I support the cause.
Yeah, so virtue signaling.
Yeah, but you'll see videos of people like going around spray painting, and they won't even be able to draw the flag right, depending on what is going on. Because there's been multiple situations where the woke crowd, they're showing they're showing a lot of just complete incompetence. Like, I saw some person spray paint the Palestine flag. Which, support or you don't, I think you should at least know how to, draw the flag. Like, he spray painted it on a building, and it's like, dude, you gotta at least know there's 3 stripes.
All right, so to be fair, so again, it in terms of an assessment of these, like, I don't want to call them movements, but they very well could be. And then you can include cancel culture as a part of that. So all of this stuff is to curtail our behaviors and how we conduct ourselves, and really it's been at the expense then of the individual. Remember, This is what all the communist regimes, once they asserted dominance in whatever nation they were in, it's the very thing they did. They shut down any kind of discourse. They did not allow for any question or dissent in the ranks with regards to policies that were being enacted. And then to compound, so on top of all of this that's going on, and now we see the radical advancement of technology where it's really pushing envelopes now, and it's doing really seriously interesting things. But now it also heightens the paranoia because we don't know exactly what it means, because we don't know where this is all going. And all that we've just finished talking about, so from these social movements and everything, it might be as a result of the fact that people now, they're feeling lost and directionless, and regardless of who's the talking heads and any of the people that are on legacy media and the internet making whatever claims they're making, it leaves them in doubt, and it promotes fear. So they fear for their existence, and it might be this subtle simmering of that. It's not like overt and in your face. It's just that it makes everybody nervous and anxious.
Well, I'm not sure if this is like directly something from a psyop, but I know that if you're stressed, you're easier to handle. Like CIA people talk about this.
Yeah.
If everybody's in a slow melting pot, I'm sure there's once in a while they shake the pot. They just try and make sure everybody realigns a certain way. Because you think about like any conflict, there's going to be at least some point where you're like, wait a minute, it feels like my side didn't tell me the whole story.
Well, again, I think the moment that when you seed disinformation amongst real information, then people don't know what to believe.
Right.
1, 2, and then if you start vilifying groups, then what you're doing is fostering further division, even if it's just like going, that's wrong thinking, right? That now it divides us, and much to the point you made, that's a perfectly good way then to control a large numbers of people. And our global population is expanding at the rates of millions of people a year, right? 20 years ago, we were 6 billion. Right? So now we're well over 8, right? So it's to be fair, around 2000, so 24 years ago. So I say 20 in a more general kind of way. And then if that creates stress or fear, which fosters stress and anxiety in people, again, makes you more docile, because you're in a physiological state where now stress hormones are being dumped into your system. So now, and because they're not separate, your mind and your body are not separate, that now that through psychologically they've got you stressed out, then physically you start experiencing stress, and now you're trapped in this cycle, and they feed each other. And so then you have greater and greater degrees of anxiety and stress. And then what do we see going on in terms of the general population? Significant spike in mental health issues, and that's not new. This is all within the last 10 years. All right, so, and here's the funny thing, because it came across some information, it was a reflection on optimal states of learning. And the optimal state of learning is when you're at play, when it's fun, you're engaged with things and they're fun. And then as a result of that, you have the capacity now, they refer to it as neuroplasticity, but it just really means learning, right? But in that playful state, in that state where it's fun. I'm not talking about being entertained, where you're engaged in whatever it is that you're doing, and you're feeling fulfilled. That then there's a greater likelihood of retention of that information, and then if you keep approaching that playful kind of way of learning, then you grow more significantly as a person. So then Alan Watts, he was a North American who basically made Taoism very accessible to Western audiences. He used to refer to life as just like it's all play. It's just for fun. It's an enormous playground, and maybe in our failing and us taking ourselves so seriously that, like, in the subjective view, right? Remember, the failing's not that you have any subjective views, like that you're religious or you adhere to a certain creed or philosophies or principles. It's when you decide that those are superior to somebody else's. Those are there for you, right? But that's part of what's feeding into the cancel culture and the woke crowd, is that they think that they know better, right?
That's definitely on both sides too, because you look at one side, they're like, "Oh, don't burn books," and then next month the other side.
Well, okay, I'm not. Okay, just so it's
But
clear.
you're speaking like broadly, just in
Right,
human terms.
right. So
Yeah.
it's not exclusive to the left-leaning liberal types or the right-wing types. It's both groups. I don't have a position, so even though it might sound like I'm being judgmental, and maybe I am,
Well, you're describing the extremes.
right? But they're both at work, and I walk the middle road, right? And I don't have no problem calling calling a spade, right? People don't like that, but I'm going. Part of our failing is that we don't approach things objectively, because it's only through objectivity that you're able to actually engage with other people and be reasonable in that engagement.
Yeah, there's enough subjectivity out there that's just completely, not to be mean about it, but like it's completely unreasonable.
Right, because again, they don't see it for what it is. They think that what they're offering up, it's like you said, that they're doing the right thing, and then they buy the $50 flag and wave, "Here's my support." It's virtue signaling. It's not. They're not actually making a meaningful contribution to anything other than dividing us further from each other. Right? And remember, I've said this before, I think, on the podcast, you can reduce all of life and all the philosophies that drive, our global society now into two views. Either we're all connected or we're all separate. And if we're all separate, then it only feeds into elitism, authoritarianism, and domination, right? And I ask you, take a good look around. What do you think is going on? Like, I got really irate with a guy who talked about Bill Gates being this great philanthropist and humanitarian. And I was like, it's clear that you don't understand anything about the guy. So he was so self-serving that he took the work of two other people and laid claim to it. If he had any shred of decency, or he was truly objective, he would have went, "You know what? I want a third of this, but those two guys are entitled to a third each." And you never even hear them. And it's commonly understood. This is the other thing. It's commonly understood, and yet people still tip their hat to him. I'm going, he's nothing more than elitist, self-serving individual, and it's expressed perfectly in the way he conducts himself. His behavior outs him, not me saying that because he does that. It's the very things that he does, right, that tell you what he's about. And what he's about is his own agenda, whatever that might be, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty standard model. Like if you're in a business and you see one group doing the same kind of niche marketing you are, and they have all these like great ideas for their new product, but you have more backing, like financially. You steal their idea, you run with it, you patent the shit out of it, and you try to make it look better.
Well, that's that reckless capitalism or cutthroat capitalism,
or late stage,
right, or crony capitalism. This form of capitalism is so centralized. It would not be unfair to characterize it as monopolies that work in place. And you doubt me, just do a cursory search of like BlackRock and Vanguard, and how much they own, out and out own, in North America, and we don't know who they actually are. Those names are just the institutions that represent these individuals who we don't know who they are. So again, it's this kind of recklessness and stupidity that further divides us, and it doesn't make any meaningful contribution unless you're so subjective that the only thing that you think there is of value is your position and your self-interest, right? Because that's what subjectivity fosters. It wants you to be the center. But if you want to be balanced, then it requires objectivity. And it's not that you're supposed to eliminate subjectivity. You're supposed to change the nature of your relationship to it. It shouldn't be dominant. In fact, you should be walking the middle road, where what you're constantly doing is teeter-totter, right? In medicine, they call it homeostasis, where the body's constantly in a state of flux to maintain the optimal physical health of the body. So that means, like, it's constantly having to adjust itself and readjust itself. Traditional capitalism, which I love, was completely decentralized, and it forced companies to to provide the best services at the lowest price point, and to be innovative in the products that they offer. You don't see that now. It's either this is all there is. And this is the choice that you have. That's it, right? So I think the first failing was allowing for them to incorporate, allowing them the rise of mega corporations.
Yeah, and if people think they're woke, they gotta look if they got one of those Stanley mugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. So what do you think they're counting on? If you have a population of 35 or 40 million people, and you can get 2 million of them to part with $20 for any given item, you do the math. What's that? That's the biggest payday you'll ever see. And if every one of us individuals had a payday like that, you'd spend the rest of your life living on a tropical island. I go, come on.
And committing crimes.
Well, why would you even need to? If 2 million people bought what you're selling at $20 per person, why do you need to commit crime?
How many? No, that's true. You don't need to, but how many companies out there are just profiting off of just straight up bad business, like Nestle, Water?
Okay, right. Okay, again, right? That's that reckless capitalism. That's these people who are like, they're so cutthroat. There's no thoughtfulness in the way that they approach things. And here we're talking about this ever-changing landscape of our society, and how we're moving forward. Now, with technology becoming even more and more robust, and all the technologies for sale, how many iPhones you think are out there, and how much do people pay for them? Okay, please, come on. So and then somehow that's what allows for them, or they decide, because they have the most money, then they should be making the decisions on behalf of the rest of us. And I'm like, they're not qualified to be making decisions that affect societies and the planet. They're the wrong people, and they should have thumb screws put to them. There should be laws in place that restrict what they can and can't do, right? And again, I don't like big government either, right? Small government, people first, right? Individuals first. When you see an ever increasing rise in homelessness, again, in conjunction with mental health issues, they're indicators that perhaps maybe we're doing things wrong. And now we're moving at this accelerated pace. And the only way to get out in front of all this stuff is for individuals like yourself, myself, everybody, that this is the most unpopular term, but you have to accept full accountability and full responsibility for existence. And then when you show up anywhere, and there's an issue going on, you don't look around for somebody else to take care of it. You're there, it's your responsibility. But this kind of accountability, it goes totally against the current institutions as they are, and maybe that's part of the problem. It's the institutions They promote bureaucracy. You have the disillusionment of any kind of sense of responsibility because it's not my job, it's their job. And then what else do? Finger point. It's their fault. It's not my fault, it's their fault.
Yeah, Canadian politics could be like just so dry at sometimes, like just straight up gray. You watch it, you feel so bored, you don't want to be involved in any of this stuff. And sometimes when I see like these politicians acting like UFC characters, just fucking screaming at each other,
Right.
it's like I don't want this person to be here because he's either a clown yelling at a clown, he's a clown getting yelled at by a normal person, or he's a normal person getting yelled at by a clown. Like either way, why is there like all these people in positions of power that are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to do all this litigation and then not deal with it because I'm gonna just leave.
Okay, because it's the size of government, right? Because there's so much bureaucracy in place that now they're just vying for attention, right? And ultimately, any time that we cast ballots, it's a popularity contest, right? And you go like, is this really the way you want our nations to be run? And recognizing geographical differences in different places, that I think that there's value in that, because then you know, like here regionally, I came from here, but how much emphasis we put on the lines on maps, they don't exist. They're not real, and our failure is our immaturity. Right? It is this collective immaturity, but it's kind of dominant because, who's being the most vocal? The most immature among us. Right? So they're the ones who are pushing policy. They're not qualified to do that. They don't represent me or you. They don't give a shit about anybody. And if somebody comes along who has a special interest, can ply them with enough money so that then to fast track their special interest to their advantage, what do you think they do? Look, the history of politics is replete with that kind of behavior, right? They're disingenuous, dishonest, and they shouldn't be trusted. Anybody who's seeking power, they're pathological. They're drawn to the power and because they're corruptible, right?
I don't see any. Well, I can see positives to wanting to be in that position, but at the same time, every rule you make, you have to understand if somebody good comes in my position next and then they use this rule, it might be beneficial, but it might be misinterpreted in so many ways. Now, if there's a bad person that takes my position and uses this rule, like no matter what rule, I always believe there's ways to bend them. If you know litigation and you're a criminal,
okay,
you're
right.
gonna go for it.
Okay, so when you look at the history of how much underhanded and dirty tactics have been used in politics, and it's not one nation, all of them, right? That it's kind of naive to think then that somehow a good person's going to step in there and make it right. I think the first thing that any junior politician aspiring to politics, I think the first lesson they learn once they get in is the system owns you. And this is the way the game is played, and you only play it this way. And if you step outside the lines, they simply get rid of you. Right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll assassinate you, although that does happen. But they'll ostracize you. They'll drive you out, because that kind of foreign thinking in the face of their authoritarian, and that's what we've seen in the last 10 years, the rise of this elitist authoritarianism. Right? And that hasn't served anyone, right? And so what's really going to benefit us all is if all of us start taking on, the struggle to unify mind, body, and spirit, San Chin. That's how we get out in front of this stuff, where everybody goes here. It's not the politician's job, it's my job. But everybody's saying that at the same time. Now, how practical is that? What, you got any thoughts before I go on about how practical it might be for people to adopt that kind of thinking? Although it's really essential and critical almost.
Well, yeah, nobody's gonna wipe your own ass for you, but at the same time, how practical it is depends on like how far you're taking it. At some point, I think everybody could at least, everybody does their recycling. Personally, I think they just burn it all. Like
Well,
they've been caught doing that in other places in Canada.
again, too
But-
true,
but
right?
we-
But
we
again,
do little things.
it speaks to again like how it's a reoccurring behavior within the political institutions, and it's not exclusive to one nation. They all do it.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a stupid joke, but the way I see it is like our recycling system is just like the start to our socialism.
Oh.
I was gonna say communism, but it's our socialism. It's like we all agree we gotta get this stuff out for the morning. Argue with the garbage guys because you're either out a minute late, your boxes aren't quite tall enough to fit all the cardboard. Like just small inconvenience, right? You can't throw in the trash. Sorry, you gotta do something special with it. That's enough priming just to get us on this course of like, oh, yeah, I have to do shitty things for the people around me, which is good if you think about taxes. But then you think about how I forget who it was, but they're saying they're considering not working on roads anymore, like building new ones.
Well, what do you do then with a degrading infrastructure?
Yeah, and we got so many people here. Like we need transport.
Locked into your community. You can't leave because it's not because you can't leave. The roads are so shit you can't go nowhere.
And why would you want to drive? Are you a protester? Your bank account's locked.
Well, imagine that, eh? Systems of control, further systems of control. They can only control you if you let them, right? There's, I can't remember who said it, but they essentially stated that when an idea's time has come, there aren't enough armies on the planet to prevent the idea from spreading. So maybe this is the idea. You want to get out in front of all this change. You want to try and make a meaningful contribution. Change yourself. It's not going to change from the top down. It's going to change when us at the bottom change. And then the top will be forced to change. Because we won't accommodate them anymore. Because, so that everything exists so that the privileged can go on feeling privileged. Did the elitists of feudalism whose right to rule was the divine right to rule? The only thing that's changed is we've degenerated into economic feudalism, and now those who have the most money, that's what gives them the right to make any decisions that affect us all collectively. And it's the failure of the individual. It's your fault, my fault, his fault, all our faults. So anyone who would sit there and hang their head, oh, I'm weak, I don't. This is the weird thing. Every human comes with these deep reserves of strength. They're so deep and so potent, they don't even realize it themselves. But if you spent your whole life just chasing all your basic needs, just meeting food, shelter, someone to love you, and then the rest of your time being distracted through your distraction of choice, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, food, whatever, I go, then whose responsibility is it? Because currently, the way that most of us conduct ourselves, what can I do? You already dispowered yourself by making that statement. You cast a spell on yourself. What can I do? Well, you can do a fuck of a lot. You can elevate yourself to your highest potential. That becomes a focus to your life. You stop pandering to these fucking assholes who are running everything, right? They're not any better than you.
I definitely think a really early step is you realize, like, you're sitting on your couch, there's this big fucking conglomerate of animals just handing you a chocolate bar. You're like, oh, thanks for the chocolate bar. You put it in your pocket, and then you give it money, and then that's your life. You're slowly getting drained. Like, it's not an experience anymore. It feels like you are effectively spending your time in order to have some time to experience.
Okay, so then how do you experience life?
Being in the moment.
Okay, right. But what should that state of mind be? Should it be like serious, focused, and stressed out, or should it be playful and fun? Right? That's how you open up that reserve of strength. That's how you start to realize your potential. So you start following those things that you love to do, that you get joy from doing. They will lead you to your potential. And then, much like anything else, you build on it slowly. And then eventually, after a lifetime, like what else are you going to do with your lifetime? Hang out and get high and drunk and stupid all the time? And that's the entirety of your existence? Or you can spend the entirety of your existence trying to realize who you are in your entirety, that you become this highest expression of yourself. Instead of you being unrealized potential, you realize all that potential. We are our greatest natural resource, and we've never been tapped. Because you can't control realized individuals. Realized individuals are whole people. They live whole lives. They don't allow others to dictate what they should and shouldn't do, and they're balanced. They understand the difference between their subjective self and objectivity, right? This is how we get out in front of this. This is how all this stuff, we bring it into a more balanced kind of way. Because if anyone out there is thinking that the society we're living in is balanced, you're completely deluded. It's a place of extremes, right?
Yeah, if anything, I feel like some countries should have a lot more money based on what they can export. Like, we're in a pretty position in Canada because we have a lot of connections economically, but also politically. You think about some other countries, like, I feel bad, but if you look at Africa, they kind of got plundered. They still don't get paid for those like.
Dude,
there's certain people like.
Sorry, I hate to burst your bubble. Every country gets plundered. Read the Diary of an Economic Hitman, right? I think that's what the title of the book, and you'll be shocked. Because corporations basically assumed all the natural resources in South America, set up holding companies, and then sold everything back to the actual members of the country, and it was done legally and politically.
Holy shit! They did that with gas in Saudi Arabia.
They do that, and they've done that here. Look, yeah. if we're all Canadian citizens and we're all equal, then why don't we equally own all the natural resources in Canada? Why don't we have access? Imagine that. If Canada was run in such a way that the government used our natural resources to the benefit of the country and every individual in it, we'd look like Saudi Arabia, or Dubai, or whatever. That ridiculous, over explosion of like obscene amounts of wealth to create. Well, we could have that in Canada. There would be no homeless. You wouldn't have mental health issues. But instead of devoting the resources and managing them in such a way so that everybody, all the general membership would have equal access, there's people out there who are so greedy, they're going, what for? I want it all.
There's definitely going to be some people who are like, oh, give me some of your natural gas. Come on, man. I got a fix I need.
Okay, but that's how you could enrich the nation of Canada, right? Each nation, they use their resources to bolster the nation. And then the institutions, you never let them get beyond a certain size. Education becomes primary, so you create opportunities for free access to education, because what you want is a completely realized population. And the only way to do that is to give them the ability to learn in a healthy learning, in a healthy learning environment, and so that they can realize the entirety of themselves. So now we've opened up this natural resource, and then everybody shouldered part of the responsibility for the workload. So for anyone out there who's super brilliant and you're hearing this, show them how to do it, how to organize in such a way so that the average working person would only have to work 4 to 5 hours and you'd still have access to everything that you required, all your basic needs, plus everything that would elevate you to the highest expression of what you are. And remember, you can scoff at the idea all you want, but if it's an idea whose time has come, then there aren't enough armies on the planet to prevent it from happening. But that's on you. Again, it always falls to you. So the person who's hearing this, who I'm looking at through this camera, it's your job. It's my job. It's everyone's job. But you're so well programmed and so well conditioned that what you want is you dream and aspire to be one of the wealthy. Well, if you're the way it's all organized is that that there's going to be those who are going to be obscenely wealthy. It has to be at the expense of others, right? So if there's going to be those who have more, that requires those who have less. But you're still strapped or trapped in all of this, right?
I was going to say, ideally, there's going to be a method, or not a method, a model where you could have, let's say, a disenfranchised group, and then one group that wants to help that group, and then the third party could just finance it. That way, the only loser is the people who wanted to finance it. Well, then it's just an investment, and then the same political shit happens with that because you just invest.
That's right. Group. That's why you can't allow institutions to grow in size. They'll as soon as they reach a certain size, they'll become corrupted. They'll only act out of self-interest. They'll forget the reason why they existed in the first place or why they were created at all, which was to serve the general membership. Look, you might accuse me of being a hippie, but let me just reassure you that I'm absolutely, in terms of economic systems, I think capitalism is one of the best ones. But a thoughtful, balanced capitalism, not this reckless, cutthroat, fucking crony capitalism that's running the fucking planet, right? So how can you reconcile that if I'm a peacemonger, but I'm the first one to throw a punch in a fight, right? So again, this idea that you can only be left or you can only be right, absolutely ridiculous. I'm made up of left and right philosophies because some of the left philosophies and some of the right philosophies are better suited given certain circumstances and conditions that you're going to encounter. And so then you have to use the tools that you have to be able to manage whatever the issue is. And sometimes that means being conservative, and sometimes that means being liberal. But instead, all the idiots who wave a flag for particular ideology think that ideology has all the answers. Well, let me ask you, particularly in the last couple hundred years in the rise of the United States, how much even-handedness have you seen as a result of that? Right? So you're going to sit here and fucking tell me how the liberals have ran the country better than the conservatives? They're both assholes. And yet, somehow, you're waving the flag going, my side's the best side. We're the right ones for the job.
Yeah, I feel like if you put treason back on the board, like, hey guys, you do treason, sorry, shit's going to happen. All of a sudden, politicians are going to be a lot more careful.
I think there's an even more clever way to deal with people who are extremely criminally motivated.
I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, I'll reiterate it now. That you don't kill them and you don't imprison them. What you do is you go, we're going to take all your assets, everything, not just from you, but your entire family. Now you all get to start out on the street with nothing. And what we're going to do is we're going to redistribute all whatever it is that you have among those who have nothing. And we're going to give it to those who have nothing. And if they understood that if they were caught with their hands in the cookie jar, how quick do you think they would correct their own behaviors? Going, shit, man, if I get caught doing this, not just me, all of us out on the street. Remember that still, you're not in jail, you're not in prison, and no one's going to kill you, but now you got to make it with nothing.
I see how that rule could be used, not in the way intended, but at the same time, it would be a very good deterrent. Because, like, hey, man, not only am I going to kick you in the head, I'm going to kick that person in the head and that person in the head.
Right, so that your actions now will have consequences across multiple lives. And so then you might be forced to think more thoughtfully, right? Because there is a contingent amongst humanity that they're monsters. When I was a kid, I never imagined that all the monsters in the world would be humans.
Yeah.
Right? To me, they were all like mythological creatures and stuff. And then you grow into adulthood and you realize, holy shit, all the horrible things that happen on the planet are a direct result of other fucking human beings.
And dinosaurs.
No,
but you know what's funny?
Don't forget those rat bastards.
The rat bastards?
Rat bastards? The dinosaurs are the rat bastards.
Oh, yeah. My bad. For some reason, I was thinking Master Splinter. Anyways.
Oh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles work! Cowabunga!
Hey, he didn't do anything wrong either. No, but I was just thinking, when I was younger, one of the scariest things for me was like, oh, a vampire. And then it was like, oh, a ghost, because, you can't...
Right.
Like, as I grew mentally, I started being able to, like, really figure out what was most terrifying. One of the most terrifying things are zombies, because you think about it, a lot of things just collapse once there's zombies. You can't really farm that easily, you can't go to the office, all this crap. But robbers, dude, they're real. Zombies aren't real yet. Fucking robbers, though. That's kind of terrifying.
But it's not just robbers. It's anybody that would impose themselves, and usually it's a criminal element because they'll use violence or intimidation to facilitate what they want, right? So that will constitute a monster. And remember, those monsters come in like great haircuts and three-piece suits and think very highly of themselves, right? They're not just, it's not obvious. The point I'm trying to make is that you can't discern what. It's not like there's a label on their forehead, I'm a monster,
yeah,
right? But you can see it in their behavior. And look, the way that we do things now and all that subjectivity, it promotes narcissism, right? Where the only thing you focus on is you. Well, when you do that, it's always going to be at the expense of someone else. And that should be the highest law, which has been around for 6,000 years. We called it the golden rule. We've covered this before in other episodes. Do unto others as you have them do unto you, right? So if you're going to push limits and do fantastic things to have material gains, the first question you need to ask is, did you exploit anyone to attain any of that stuff? And if the answer is yes, then you need to self-correct. I'm not interested in wasting more human lives. We have enough of that. That's the solution to every fucking problem for the last 6,000 years. And, we started talking about how all these movements within society, and just in the last 5 to 10 years, they're the culmination of the last 6,000 years. This push towards getting humanity under one flag, under one authority. Right? Regardless of regional differences and nationalities and that sort of thing, right? This is the closest we've ever been, and the technology is accelerating forward. And how do you as an individual, how are you able to cope with all this stuff? Look, the traditional coping mechanisms have always been things like faith, cognitive dissonance, right? Or out and out denial. And that should tell you something. It's a sign that the psychology of the individual is being overwhelmed. They can't manage what the reality they're confronted with. So then they break down. In the breakdown, then they find a comfort zone that I can function out of here. Right? And I'm going here. We can liberate ourselves from all that stuff. You don't have to be trapped by none of it, but it requires us as individuals to go, hey, I'm entirely accountable. not just to me, but to everybody else around me. And I could see where that might actually even be an unpopular idea, but it might be the idea that actually rights the ship. All right. So if you're looking for an idea, if you're looking for a creed, a universal creed, it's that you accept, you not only willfully, but you willingly accept all accountability and responsibility, not just for your existence, but for the existence of every other human on the planet.
I think one important question I said to my friend when he was trying to like pick out what he wanted to do for post-secondary, I was like, well, what do you think you could do the most help with? And usually if you're really helping, you're really enjoying the work too. Um, but that's something that I think is always beneficial. Like, you're not profiting off of it. That's not the question. The question is, what are you doing to help? And ideally, that's something that's, it's unifying your group, like socially, your small part of your town, but also like it just, I forget the term for it, but it's like it makes you more consistent.
Right. So it's smaller networks, because then they're naturally inclined to feel obligated to that network, to
Oh,
the individuals in the network.
yeah, you have to impose your own little socialism. You gotta be like, hey man, if you gotta impose it
It's
on
not
yourself, not
that
your friends.
I would not like to use that as a way to characterize it, but
It's silly, I know.
uh, but like I said, smaller networks where people help each other out, right? Where they're extended networks, where everybody feels responsible for everybody else. So you're not
Yeah,
just responsible for you, but everybody in your network. You help each other out. What that it's essentially a family, right?
well, in my mind, the whole socialism idea within a small group is like I impose it on myself. That means that my relationship with them, you think of like the cache of like saved, like positive behaviors, like, oh, I help them this way, they help me this way. We have like 20 years of like just friendship. It's that kind of cache and the rules you place on yourself that allow you to go like, hey, you're a baker, I'm not baking, I make railways, but there's some intersection. Like maybe we both go to the mill, maybe we
Right.
order
I get
together.
what you're saying. That there's some overlap where you can help each other out. I would look at it again. It fosters the idea of connection, because now you're engaged in the connection, right? And you're all driven by the same creed. I'm looking for the highest expression of who I am. San Chin, the struggle to unify mind, body, and spirit, right? That's what your personal creed. And then as part in conjunction with that is that accountability and responsibility. And they're not just words. It's the way it's language that describes behavior. So then you have to behave like that. You can't simply, right? Remember the virtue signalers, right? They're saying all the right things and all, because what they're thinking is that it'll gain them favor. This is not about favor. This is about you realizing who you are in your entirety, and realizing all the potential that exists in you as a single individual. And that's part of your contribution, part of your responsibility to the whole. And that if everybody does it, then we elevate ourselves to a capacity I go that I don't even think imagination has demonstrated or illustrated what we could do. It's not a matter of what we could do. If we all elevate to the highest expression, then the question becomes, what couldn't we do?
I think that's a good question, but I also think just on basic premise, it's such a good idea because you could walk down to a store and you would walk past like five neighbors. You'll only know two of them, but that's still like two people that you care about, that you think about, like involved in your life. Not that you intentionally want to involve them. It's just you're in the city. You walked a certain distance, and you're like, oh shit, I know these people from
Right.
around.
Okay, community.
Yeah,
Right? Real community.
like grassroots community, not like
Right.
oh I followed them on Instagram.
Right. Real community, right? So, and again, I think these are ideas. What's old is new. So we've gotten so far away from what we could be, what we think we are, that now we could that we very well could envision and then realize a completely different direction, right? But that requires, it falls on the shoulders of the individuals. No government's going to do it. No institution of higher learning is going to do it. Nothing that we've created as organizations are going to do it. It's you, the individual, is going to do it. You matter. You matter more than you ever dared imagine. But you think of yourself as being so small, a nothing. Well, let me reassure you. You're the universe. Right? You can be everything, anything. You're only limited by your own imagination. And then your whole purpose should be to push past those limitations that are self-imposed. And usually as a result, some asshole fucking imposing them on you. Right? So this is the only way out. As far as I see it. It's entirely opinionated. I'm not nobody. I don't know shit. But I know enough to know that everything we've done leading up until now has only produced greater division. So then the answer may well be stronger connection. Yeah, man. Okay, cool.
Just throwing gang signs.
Yeah, you're a terrible man. I'm actually really satisfied with that. Any thoughts you have? I think I'd like to close on that. I don't think there's more that we could say.
No, I was going to say something, but it's pretty obvious. Just about like how we group together, it seems silly because you can never have a consistent group. There's always going to be details different. We're all different.
Right, 100%.
Everything's different.
Right.
Everything's connected. It's an oxymoron, I know.
Well, so we don't have to be divided, but that requires you to seek balance, to be balanced. So then the focus, then if you're feeling unbalanced, then you have to address that first, right? And there's tons of people out there who are promoting real individual work to elevate the individual. Seek them out. Find out who's talking about it and who's actually done like good research, and then what they suggest, and then do that, right? And there you go. You can fill an entire lifetime in the pursuit of that, and you can feel good and enriched and satisfied and make a meaningful contribution to everything. Hear, hear?
Hell yeah.
Okay. So in closing, I would like to say, question everything, including yourself, especially yourself. Seek balance. Seek knowledge. Seek understanding. Become a renegade individualist, humanist, critical, objective thinker. Thank you for your time.